Welcome to the dark mysteries of the sea, where vessels drift aimlessly across the waves with no one aboard. These are stories of ghost ships, vessels found intact, with cargo untouched, meals still warm on tables, and not a single soul to explain what happened. Today, we're diving into 7 of the most chilling maritime mysteries that remain unsolved to this day. On December 4, 1872, the British ship Dei Gratia spotted a vessel sailing erratically between Portugal and the Azores. As they approached, they realized something was terribly wrong. The ship was the Mary Celeste, and it was completely deserted. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 crew members had vanished without a trace. What made this discovery even more bizarre was the condition of the ship. The cargo of 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol was intact and untouched. Personal belongings remained in the cabins. The captain's logbook sat on his desk, with the last entry dated 9 days earlier. Breakfast dishes were laid out on the table. The ship's sewing machine had cloth still positioned under the needle, as if someone had just stepped away. 6 months' worth of food and water remained in storage. However, disturbing details emerged. The ship's single lifeboat was missing, along with the navigation instruments. A frayed rope trailed behind the vessel in the water. One of the ship's pumps had been disassembled. The cargo hold had about 3.5 feet of water, which wasn't unusual for a vessel of that era, but one of the hatches was open. Most mysteriously, a sword was found under the captain's bed with what appeared to be blood on it, though later analysis proved inconclusive. Theories have ranged from piracy to mutiny, from waterspouts to underwater earthquakes. Some suggested the alcohol fumes created an explosion scare, causing everyone to abandon ship temporarily, only to be unable to return. Others proposed a more sinister scenario involving foul play. 150 years later, we still don't know what caused 10 people to abandon a perfectly seaworthy ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, never to be seen again. January 31, 1921, brought one of America's most baffling maritime mysteries. The Carol Deering, a 5-masted commercial schooner, was found run aground on the Diamond Shoals of North Carolina, an area so dangerous it's known as the graveyard of the Atlantic. When rescue crews finally boarded the ship days later, they found it completely abandoned. The 11-man crew had vanished. But this wasn't a simple case of a ship in distress. The crew's personal belongings were gone, yet the ship's navigation equipment, logbooks, and important papers had also disappeared. The ship's lifeboats were missing. Most eerily, food was still cooking in the galley, suggesting the crew had been in the middle of meal preparation when something caused them to flee. 2 days before the ship was found, a lightship keeper reported that the Deering had passed by, and a crewman shouted through a megaphone that the vessel had lost its anchors. Strangely, this man was not wearing an officer's uniform, which violated maritime protocol. After the ship ran aground, a man was seen on board through binoculars, walking the deck as if nothing was wrong, only to disappear. Several witnesses reported seeing red signal flares from the area on the night before the ship was discovered, but no rescue was attempted due to rough seas. The investigation uncovered even stranger elements. A few days after the Deering was found, A message in a bottle washed ashore claiming the crew had been captured by pirates. The handwriting was analyzed and declared a hoax, but it raised disturbing questions. Was this truly a hoax, or was it a genuine plea for help dismissed too quickly? The timing coincided with Prohibition, leading some to suggest runners or hijackers. Others pointed to the Bermuda Triangle, as the ship had passed through those waters. The official investigation considered piracy, mutiny, and even Soviet interference, but concluded with no definitive answer. To this day, no trace of the 11 men has ever been found. On October 3, 1955, the merchant vessel Joyita departed Samoa for the Tokelau Islands with 25 people aboard, 16 crew members, and 9 passengers. The 70-foot ship never reached its destination. 5 weeks later, on November 10th, the vessel was found adrift 600 miles off course, partially submerged and listing heavily to one side. Every single person aboard had disappeared without a trace. The condition of the ship when found raises more questions than answers. The Joyita was designed to be practically unsinkable due to the cork lining in the hull, yet it was taking on water and sitting dangerously low. All of the ship's lifeboats and rafts were missing, suggesting a deliberate evacuation. However, the abandoned ship protocol hadn't been followed. The radio was still functional and tuned to the international distress frequency, but no distress call had been made. Personal belongings littered the deck and cabins in disarray. A doctor's bag was found open, with bloody bandages scattered nearby, suggesting someone had been injured. Navigation lights were found switched to their emergency setting. The engine was dead. An inspection revealed a clutch issue that would have left the ship adrift but was completely repairable. Cargo was missing, including tons of empty fuel drums and medical supplies. Perhaps most disturbing, the ship's logbook, sextant, mechanical clock, and other navigation equipment were all gone. The deck was covered in a canvas awning that had been rigged, possibly to provide shade for injured passengers. Theories proliferated wildly. Some suggested pirates attacked the vessel. Others proposed a mutiny or hijacking related to the valuable cargo. The presence of blood and medical supplies suggested a violent incident or illness. Could they have been attacked by another vessel? Did they encounter something in the water? The Japanese fishing fleet was active in the area, leading to speculation about an accidental or intentional encounter. A few investigators suggested the crew may have seen another vessel in distress and abandoned the Joyita to provide aid, only to meet disaster themselves. 68 years later, not a single body, life raft, or piece of definitive evidence has ever been recovered. The vast and unforgiving sea has always been a source of mystery and dread, a realm where ships and their crews can vanish without a trace. From the age of sail to our modern era of satellite tracking, the ocean continues to spawn tales of ghost ships, vessels found adrift, empty, with their crews inexplicably gone. These stories tap into a primal fear of the unknown, leaving us with chilling questions that often remain unanswered. In this exploration, we delve into some of the most haunting maritime mysteries, voyages that ended not in a known disaster, but in an eerie, silent abandonment. World War I brought many mysteries to the seas, but few are as strange as the story of the SV Sabrina. On October 16, 1917, this two-masted schooner departed from Falmouth, England, bound for St. Brieuc, France, carrying a cargo of coal. The ship was manned by a crew of 5 experienced sailors, and the journey was expected to be a routine wartime crossing, despite the ever-present threat of German U-boats. Just 2 days later, the Sabrina was found run aground on the Roches d'Over reef, off the coast of France. The ship was discovered in a condition that defied easy explanation. It was completely intact, its sails were still properly set, and the cargo of coal was undisturbed. But the crew had vanished completely, leaving behind a perfectly seaworthy vessel. What made this disappearance particularly unsettling was the state of the ship. Investigators found no signs of a struggle, no damage to the vessel, and no apparent reason why the crew would abandon a fully functional ship. The weather during its short voyage had been reported as calm. The lifeboats were still secured in their places, which meant the crew had either jumped overboard or, more likely, had been taken off by another vessel. Given the wartime context, speculation immediately turned to German U-boats, which actively patrolled those waters. One prominent theory suggested that a submarine may have surfaced, captured the crew as prisoners of war, and simply left the empty ship to drift. However, a post-war examination of German naval records showed no recorded encounter with the Sabrina. Another theory proposed that the crew might have spotted what they mistakenly believed was a U-boat and panicked, somehow abandoning ship in a great hurry. This, however, doesn't explain why the lifeboats were left behind, secured in their davits. Some even suggested that a British patrol boat could have taken the crew for questioning, fueled by the intense paranoia about spies during the war, but no official records support this claim. A darker, more dramatic theory emerged. Could the entire crew have been on deck together and been swept overboard by a single, massive rogue wave? While possible, their personal belongings were found undisturbed in the cabin, which seems inconsistent with a sudden catastrophic event or a hasty evacuation. The mystery of the Sabrina remains officially unsolved, with 5 men added to the countless souls claimed by the sea without explanation. Their fate a haunting footnote in the annals of maritime history. Fast forward to the 21st century. In 2006, an era of advanced technology, satellite tracking, and constant communication, the idea of a ghost ship seemed like a relic of the past. The discovery of the MV Jianseng proved that the ocean's mysteries are timeless. This Taiwanese fishing vessel was found drifting aimlessly near the coast of Australia, completely abandoned. When Australian customs officials boarded the silent ship, they discovered a scene that appeared frozen in time. Food was found rotting in the galley, as if a meal had been abruptly interrupted. Clothes were still hanging in the crew's quarters. Critically, the ship's engines were in perfect working order, and there was ample fuel and supplies on board. Yet, all 11 members of its crew had vanished into thin air. The subsequent investigation uncovered a series of bizarre and troubling details. It was determined that the ship had been drifting for weeks, possibly even months. Its last known position had been logged near the coast of Taiwan, meaning it had traveled thousands of miles across the ocean, completely unmanned. The life rafts were still aboard, which effectively ruled out the possibility of a standard emergency evacuation. There was no sign of a struggle, no evidence of a fire or mechanical failure that would have forced the crew to leave. Perhaps the most puzzling aspect of the Jianseng case was its ownership. The vessel had changed hands multiple times through a series of suspicious transactions, and when it was found, no one seemed willing to step forward and claim it. Further investigation revealed that Indonesian authorities had previously looked into the vessel for illegal fishing activities. There were also reports that some of its crew members may have been victims of human trafficking or were undocumented workers, adding another layer of complexity to the mystery. Maritime authorities considered several scenarios to explain the crew's disappearance. Had they been involved in illegal activities and fled when they feared interception by law enforcement? Were they forcibly removed by another vessel, perhaps taken for ransom or something far worse? Could a violent conflict have erupted on board, ending with everyone abandoning the ship? The condition of the vessel suggested that the departure was organized rather than panicked, yet no distress signal was ever sent. The Indonesian government later claimed that the crew had been safely repatriated, but the families of the missing men disputed this, stating that their loved ones never returned home. The ship itself, deemed a navigational hazard, was eventually scuttled and sent to the bottom of the sea, taking its secrets with it. In an age of GPS, satellite phones, and constant surveillance, 11 men disappeared from a fishing vessel without a single trace. Ghost ships are not just a historical phenomenon. They continue to appear, challenging our modern understanding of the sea. In February 2020, Storm Dennis battered the coast of Ireland with violent winds and massive waves. When the residents of Ballycotton, a small fishing village in County Cork, awoke after the storm, they were met with an astonishing sight. A large, rusted cargo ship had run aground on the rocks near their village. The ship was identified as the MV Alta, and it was completely abandoned. This in itself wouldn't be terribly unusual after a major storm, except for one incredible fact. The Alta had been drifting across the Atlantic Ocean, alone, for over a year and a half. The ship's bizarre final journey began in September 2018, when it departed from Greece with a crew of 10, supposedly heading for Haiti. Somewhere in the vastness of the Atlantic, the vessel experienced a catastrophic mechanical failure and became disabled, leaving it dead in the water. The crew drifted for 20 long days before being rescued by the U.S. Coast Guard in a dramatic helicopter operation, approximately 1,300 miles southeast of Bermuda. However, the story of the ship itself was far from over. Salvaging the large vessel proved to be too expensive for its owners, so a decision was made to simply cut it loose and leave it to the mercy of the ocean currents. For the next 18 months, the empty vessel wandered the Atlantic, a silent, rusting behemoth. It was occasionally spotted by other ships, becoming a floating navigational hazard. It drifted uncontrolled through busy shipping lanes, survived multiple storms, and traveled over 2,000 miles on its solitary voyage. What makes the story of the Alta so truly eerie is the image of this massive steel vessel, completely empty, rolling through the waves month after month. Sailors who spotted it during its ghost voyage reported an unsettling, almost supernatural feeling upon seeing such a large ship with no lights, no crew, and no signs of life, just drifting wherever the currents took it. When it finally ran aground in Ireland, local explorers who boarded the wreck found a ship that had been ravaged by time and the sea. Rust covered every surface. Seawater had flooded the lower decks, but the vessel remained structurally intact, a strange testament to the durability of modern shipbuilding. The Alta represents a new breed of ghost ship, one whose crew survived, but whose vessel continued to haunt the seas long after they were gone. It now sits on the Irish coast, a peculiar tourist attraction and a powerful reminder that even in our highly connected age, the ocean can still claim ships and turn them into wandering specters of the deep. If ghost ships are unsettling, the Orang Medan is absolutely terrifying. According to reports, in June 1947, Multiple ships navigating the Strait of Malacca received a chilling distress call. The message was in Morse code from a Dutch freighter called the Orang Medan. All officers, including captain, are dead, lying in chart room and bridge. Possibly whole crew dead. This was followed by indecipherable Morse code, then one final message. I die. Then silence. 2 American vessels, the Silver Star and others in the area, rushed to the location and found the Orang Medan drifting aimlessly. When the rescue crew boarded, they discovered a scene straight from a nightmare. The entire crew was dead, the captain on the bridge, the officers in the wheelhouse and chart room, and the sailors scattered across the deck. Their bodies were frozen in positions of agony, faces twisted in terror, arms reaching out as if fending off an attacker. Even the ship's dog was found dead, teeth bared in a snarl. According to the rescuers, the dead men's eyes were open, staring at something invisible, their expressions showing absolute horror. The temperature on board was normal, ruling out freezing. There were no signs of physical injuries, no wounds, no blood, no signs of struggle or violence. Whatever killed them left no mark except the terror on their faces. As the rescue crew examined the ship, they noticed the temperature suddenly dropping despite the tropical climate. An eerie feeling pervaded the vessel. Then smoke began rising from the cargo hold. The rescue team quickly evacuated back to their ship. Moments later, a violent explosion ripped through the Orang Medan, and the ship sank rapidly, taking all evidence to the bottom of the ocean. The investigation that followed raised more questions than answers. Dutch and maritime authorities found no record of a ship named Orang Medan in their registries. Some researchers claimed the ship was involved in transporting illegal chemical weapons or hazardous materials for the Japanese or Chinese military, and a leak killed everyone aboard. Others suggested carbon monoxide poisoning or toxic cargo fumes. The most disturbing theory involves paranormal causes. Could something supernatural have boarded that ship? The explosion immediately after discovery seemed almost intentional, as if destroying evidence. Some investigators now believe the entire incident may have been a Cold War cover-up, with the ship carrying secret military cargo that no government wanted exposed. Over 75 years later, we still don't know if the Orang Medan truly existed, and if it did, what horror killed its entire crew while leaving them frozen in terror. Some ghost ships don't just disappear, they reappear. The Lady Lovabond is perhaps the most famous example of a ship cursed to sail forever. On February 13, 1748, Captain Simon Reed set sail from London on his new ship, the Lady Lovabond, to celebrate his wedding. He had just married and brought his bride aboard for their honeymoon voyage, along with wedding guests. It was meant to be a joyous occasion. Instead, it became a maritime tragedy and the beginning of a legend. The ship's first mate, John Rivers, was secretly in love with the captain's new bride. Consumed by jealousy and reportedly intoxicated, Rivers snapped. He deliberately crashed the Lady Lovabond into the notorious Goodwin Sands, a shifting sandbar off the coast of Kent, England, known for claiming hundreds of ships. The Lady Lovabond broke apart on the sands, and everyone aboard perished. But according to legend, that wasn't the end of the story. Exactly 50 years later, in 1798, multiple witnesses reported seeing a 3-masted schooner identical to the Lady Lovabond heading straight for the Goodwin Sands. Rescue boats were dispatched, but when they arrived, there was nothing there. No ship, no wreckage, no survivors. 50 years after that, in 1848, the ship was seen again by the crew of a fishing vessel. They watched it sail directly toward the sands and vanish. In 1898, Witnesses again reported seeing the phantom ship, this time noting that it appeared to glow with an eerie light. The most recent widely reported sighting was in 1948, 200 years after the original tragedy. Several people, including the captain of a freighter, reported seeing a three-masted schooner matching the Lady Lavabon's description, sailing toward the Goodwin Sands before disappearing. In 1998, paranormal investigators and locals gathered at the coast, hoping to witness the ship's appearance, but nothing materialized. Does the Lady Lavabon truly sail every 50 years, reenacting its tragic final voyage? Or is it simply maritime folklore, with witnesses seeing other vessels and their minds filling in the legendary details? The pattern of sightings spanning 2.5 centuries suggests something remarkable, whether supernatural or psychological, continues to haunt the waters off Kent. Modern technology, GPS tracking, and constant communication should make ghost ships impossible in the 21st century. The Kaz II proved otherwise. In April 2007, this 40-foot catamaran left Airlie Beach in Queensland, Australia, with 3 experienced sailors aboard. Derek Batten, aged 56, and brothers Peter and James Tunstead, aged 69 and 63. They were headed for Townsville on what should have been a routine coastal voyage. 3 days later, a helicopter pilot spotted the Kaz II drifting 80 miles off the coast. When authorities boarded the yacht, they found it completely intact and fully operational, but the crew had vanished. The scene aboard was disturbingly normal. The engine was running. A laptop computer was turned on. The radio and GPS were functioning. The table was set for dinner. Food and utensils were laid out. Personal belongings, including wallets, phones, and clothing, remained in the cabin. Life jackets were still stored in their compartments. Most bizarrely, fishing lines were still in the water, trailing behind the boat. The emergency beacon had not been activated. There was no sign of struggle, no evidence of foul play, no indication that anything was wrong. It was as if the 3 men had simply vanished mid-activity. The investigation revealed a few unsettling clues. The yacht's sails were up but shredded, suggesting it had been drifting unmanned for at least a day or 2. One of the life jackets was found floating in the water near where the yacht was discovered, but it showed no signs of use. The boat's fenders were out, which sailors typically deploy when coming alongside another vessel or dock. Did they encounter another boat? Security camera footage from the marina showed all 3 men were in good spirits when they departed, laughing and joking. There were no arguments, no tension. Theories ranged from the rational to the fantastic. The official investigation suggested the most likely scenario was that 1 man fell overboard, possibly while checking the fishing lines, and the other 2 jumped in to save him without life jackets. The strong currents in that area could have prevented them from swimming back to the boat. But this doesn't explain why experienced sailors wouldn't throw a life ring first or activate the emergency beacon. Some proposed a rogue wave swept all 3 overboard simultaneously, though weather conditions were calm that day. Darker theories suggested 1 crew member caused harm to the others, and then took his own life by jumping overboard. Despite extensive searches covering over 2,000 square nautical miles, involving aircraft and vessels, not a single body, life raft, or piece of evidence has ever been found. The families of the missing men struggled with the lack of closure. Modern forensic analysis of the boat revealed no blood, no signs of struggle, nothing to indicate violence. The Kaz II has been called the Mary Celeste of the 21st century, a perfectly preserved vessel with its crew simply erased from existence. In an age where we can track ships via satellite and communicate across the globe instantly. 3 experienced sailors disappeared from a well-equipped yacht without leaving a single clue about what happened to them. The ocean covers over 70% of our planet, and despite all our modern technology, it remains largely unexplored and deeply mysterious. These 7 ghost ships represent just a fraction of the vessels found abandoned throughout maritime history. Each story reminds us that the sea keeps its secrets. Whether these disappearances have rational explanations, piracy, storms, accidents, or panic or something more inexplicable, we may never know. What makes these cases particularly haunting is not just that crews vanished, but that they left behind frozen moments in time. Meals half-eaten, clothing laid out, navigation equipment in place, all suggesting that whatever happened occurred suddenly and without warning. The families of those who disappeared are left without answers, without closure, without even knowing where their loved ones spent their final moments. As we continue to sail the seas and explore the oceans, will we solve these mysteries, or will new ghost ships continue to appear, adding to the collection of vessels that drift with no one aboard? The sea has witnessed human history for millennia, and it seems determined to hold on to some stories forever.